With that, I would like to invite all the panelists, so including Kate, Alyssa, Alexa, and Priyanka, to turn on their cameras and join us. And we also have one more person joining us, which is Julian Rossman, who is a senior associate ventures in digital health at Plug and Play Tech Center. Julian, glad to meet you. Thank you so much for joining us. And let's start a little bit to wake up everybody, maybe with a little bit of warm-up exercise. You all have experience with startups, so let's imagine a bit of a situation that you're an early stage FemTech venture, you need a lawyer, and let's imagine it's a magical lawyer. He can help you with your IP, but he can also help you with your term sheet. You need a communications and marketing professional. And again, let's imagine somebody who can help you to create great scientific communication, but also build cool marketing campaigns on social media targeted to all of the different audiences that you need to address, which are investors, but also potentially consumers and corporates. And you also need a techie that can either help you build a super cool product or help you in the R&D. And you can only afford 2 out of 3. So a lawyer, a marketing, and a tech person. Which 2 would you choose and why? Let's start with Alexa.
Oh man, am I myself? Am I myself? Well, I would choose the things I'm bad at. So I would say, let's hire the tech person and the lawyer, and I can help you out on the market.
Sounds good. Elisa, how about you?
I'm gonna have to agree because I can do marketing. So I think marketing is really important. So it's really hard to choose, but I would have to go with tech and lawyer. Marketing and tech may seem obvious, but I've found with legal, if you try to like go the cheap route or you try to go it on your own, it just costs you more money in the end coming back to clean it all up.
Great. Julian, how about you? You're also good at marketing.
I agree. Yeah, I think if you're the founder, you have to be good at marketing. And if you don't know how to translate your scientific knowledge into the business area, the commercial realm, then you need to work on that skill set and you shouldn't hire it out. You should be able to do it yourself. But I also am really good at that as I was an English major and used to do some of that translation work for founders. So I feel confident that I need to hire a tech person and agree with Elisa on why you need a lawyer.
Priyanka, you obviously have no problems with communication. So would it be the same too on your side?
I think it's very important this is a great question to start. I think it's really important to understand as there is a difference between sales and marketing. We usually bring them under the one umbrella. There are 2 different things. I'm really good at marketing, so I would also go with a lawyer. However, it's always good to do research because there are a lot of communities where they're bringing lawyers together under one umbrella. So you can save a lot of legal fees upfront. Unless you have a client who really wants to see your product, don't spend your money on it. I didn't want to do it for the first 6 months. So I saved a lot of it. So it's usually lawyer for me. Legal is very important, especially with intellectual property because we're selling things online. So you want to make sure that you are protected. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Priyanka, for this. Kate, what about you?
Well, as a lawyer by background, I will, of course, defer with everyone by saying that lawyers are very important and actually they can save you lots of money. I think that marketing is something that I will probably be able to manage myself as well. And I've been exposed to a great marketing team at Deep Knowledge Group. So I think I'm in consensus with the rest of the speakers here.
Sounds great. And everyone else, feel free to share your reflections on this in the chat. Let's move to a little bit more serious questions. Investors. When you will be talking to investors and when the investors will be doing the due diligence, there is one thing they would want to see in your financial projections, which are very challenging if you're an early stage startup. And that is a break-even point, which will be very different for, let's say, biotech startup or a wellness startup. As investors, what are your expectations on the break-even point and strategy? When should it be for FemTech products? Granted, different categories of products, different break-even in terms of time, but is it 1 year, 2 years? What is your take on that? Who would like to start?
Well, I can start, even though my business is not FemTech, but because I sit with a lot of coaching and mentoring that. The world and the market in terms of demographic has changed. Pandemic has changed those boundaries. We don't have any reports to benchmark that. Let's be very honest. So what I'm going to tell you is like every industry, every product has a different measurements and benchmark to measure. You can pitch one and take one report and say, hey, you know what? This is has worked for me. Take this and work for yourself. It's like you to each their own. So what I'm going to tell you, everyone in the room, see where you stand, what problems are you solving, what are your product and services, is it service or product? Because in the end, sometimes startups, they don't know whether they are selling a service or a product. So first, it's really important for you to slow down, go back to the drawing board and say, what I am solving, is it a service or a product? And again, give yourself 6 months to assess, at the same time keep changing your plan. You can't just have one plan and say, hey, I'm going to work for it, and not being able to. So in the end, see where you are. Your story, your business is unique to you, and it's not going to copycat other one. That's what I can say to everyone on the call today.
Thank you. Alexa, let's get brutal here. Come on. What is your take on it?
Sure. I think if you sort of point to, not to call anyone out, but somebody like Uber, where their initial business model, the economics were pretty pie in the sky. That era is probably over, where no matter what business you're pitching, the core business, the business you're doing today, and the business that you're pitching today, not your future business growth opportunities, needs to have healthy margins and actually just have, like, the economics need to make sense. So I'd go that route, that whatever core business you're building today, at some point, if you sort of like turn off the growth marketing machine, there has to be profit built in and healthy margin. And then whatever additional business units you could see yourself growing in the future, those are sort of icing on the cake. But the key business should have the promise of healthy margins.
Thank you. Elisa, anything to add?
I mean, they both covered it pretty well. I do have one note though, and it's not that I disagree. I do think that you can have both a product offering that has a service aspect to it if you do it right. And so it is really knowing how to achieve that balance. But yeah, you have to be able to pivot, and you have to be able to listen to the market as you're growing the strategy.
Julian, any expectations on break even point
Yeah,
or year?
No, yeah, for sure. If it's B2B, you get more time, frankly, because it takes a lot longer to build up those relationships. And in healthcare, I've seen more companies go direct to consumer in the last 2 years because B2B was harder to do, like even harder to do. So now with the direct to consumer, you're seeing revenue like within the first year for sure. I mean, it might be small, but that's a start. I mean, you can have your beta customers are actually paying to be part of the beta. It's not totally free. So direct to consumer revenue right out the gate, basically.
Thank you. Kate, a lawyer perspective?
Well, not a lawyer perspective, but we're not really looking for quick returns. Like, for instance, we believed in AI and drug discovery back in the day when, it was in very embryonic stage. So, and then of course, now it's a very hot field. We had a conference about it yesterday, actually. So for us, this is not a primary objective, but we do want to make with our investment, a big impact and improvement. So we would like to see something like, for instance, we're big believers in AI. So that would everything to do with that as it applies to FemTech would be definitely of interest to us. I hope this answers the question.
Yes, absolutely. It's interesting that in your report, of course, North America is huge, right? And there are more opportunities for FemTech ventures because there are also a lot of investors. You also mentioned other countries like Canada and Germany. In your opinion, or in opinion of everybody here, what are now kind of the FemTech hubs and kind of places to be globally?
Well, you would be surprised, and I'm not trying to please our moderator here, but actually we believe that Switzerland holds lots of and in fact, we have a report on that. So I think we need to talk.
Sounds great. Anyone else? Any thoughts on any other country? I'll take Switzerland any day, but
I think I can add something from Canada. So I think if you are aware on the call, like Canada, our health system is government regulated. The health line, even for a common flu, you have to wait at least a week to get through a doctor. So now with economy in terms of our political leaders are going to point where it's relaxation are coming in, more companies are coming in terms of an outside investor, and there is a way where there is bringing a more private healthcare in the sector, because the way our healthcare is built is like pre-ancient, is like 100 years old, nothing has changed, you're still in a queue. So right now Canada is upcoming, there are a lot of startups that are coming, and especially they're catering to the millennials who are accessing healthcare through apps. So it's a bigger market right now.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. That's happening here too in the US more and more. There's more virtual care options, and then there's more coverage that is starting to accommodate that virtual care. And so there's a lot more niche care that's available at our fingertips. I mean, I was introduced to a company and given it basically looks like a ear thermometer, but it's a way to look and see if your child has an ear infection. And then you just do a quick telehealth visit and it's dealt with in the middle of the night. And that's getting coverage by Medicaid and then the major insurers. So, and being that women, we're talking about FemTech, that's pediatric care, but women are the #1 decision makers in the household. We are more willing to lean towards a virtual care model for the sake of convenience, for the sake of getting care quickly, especially for our children, ourselves, our families.
For sure.
I would say the Middle East is pretty exciting, places where femtech topics have been very taboo, and that using digital technologies to bring them to the forefront and get women out of the shadows for their healthcare. That's very normal, what they're going through, and that many other people have. Those are the regions I'm really excited to see femtech grow.
And I will also add UK. I'm actually quite pleased that that we probably are listening well to our audience, because the regional reports that we're planning to release, in addition to Switzerland, is actually do involve Canada, UK, and the United Arab Emirates. So I'm glad that others think similarly.
There's a question in the chat about Africa. Does any of you consider Africa as, there is a lot of things happening in Africa right now. There are some innovation hubs, interesting things happening in Nairobi, in Kenya. Allianz, one of the insurances, I work for the insurance business, so I know these things, is opening also some activities there in terms of innovation. Do you think that in the next 5 years, we'll see also an increased demand for FemTech solutions in Africa?
Well, hopefully. And our research is global, right? So I didn't have a chance to delve into details, but there are some countries, including in Africa, that do have femtech companies, and in the future we will definitely do a report on Africa as well. So whoever asks these questions, if you have any pointers or suggestions, please reach out. I would be delighted to address this topic and arrange the analytics team for that.
Yeah, I agree. It's I think there's a couple issues at play in Africa. So first, you have to get some basic infrastructure turned digital. So that's why the femtech market might be so small at the moment, because they're still working on some other sort of more basic foundation work. But also there's products that have been built out in other markets that are not going to translate to Africa, either like culturally or just price point wise. So they'll be sort of built again, like a Me Too version built in Africa, but they'll be built differently because they're built years later with a different context and by the local people. So the next cool thing in femtech could be in 3 to 5 years could actually be originated from Africa and then exported to Canada or US or something like that.
Thank you. Maybe a bit of a more pragmatic question to Alexa. Can you remind us, what is the stage of the startups that you guys are looking at?
Halogen invests pre-seed through Series A. We basically, our sweet spot is a 20 million valuation or below. If it's confusing, what stages across the globe, what stages are called what? I'd say the other distinction is we do look for some sort of revenue in the consumer packaged goods space, as opposed to we'll consider pre-revenue SaaS or tech companies.
So there's a very cool startup in our Tech Forever cohort, which is called Wild with a V, and they're actually developing tampons made from algae. So sustainable, recyclable. You should definitely check them out. Another question that came upon, we didn't have a lot of time to speak about the SHIO, and there was a bit of a confusion in the chat. Is it a fund? Is it a VC? Priyanka, can you maybe tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure, thank you so much. So just to give a brief description in a nutshell, so SHIO is a woman and non-binary led venture that has been born 5 years ago in Canada. It is not a venture, but it's something called a perpetuity fund, where we women like you and me will pull in a denomination of dollars every month on a yearly basis, and that fund goes in the whole one fund, where when you apply as a venture, so voting process opens every year. Right now, SHIO is present in Canada, UK, US, New Zealand, and Australia. So women, right now we have 6,000 active members, which we call as activators, who are willingly are investing every month. So someone like you who has a dream, who have an idea, can be funded. These are women who have brilliant ideas, but may not have the credit history to go to a bank, may not have the communication or internet to bring those ideas to the forefront. So they are coming to SHIO, applying through a form, through a voting process, and we are funding them in terms of getting them the money, getting them the coaching and mentoring services, and make sure they're up and running. And once they're up and running between 3 to 5 years, that money, that cool gain, comes back in the fund so we can reinvest. So it's like it's going from my hand to yours and yours and yours. So it goes in a circle.
But is there some due diligence process? Do you assess this investment opportunities?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, there is the full process and due diligence. There are a lot of firms and intellectual and legal owners that goes in the process, and that can be done via the website.
Thank
But
you.
it's a great avenue to explore, because there is another way to get funding. So there is a way, there's a better way to get funding.
I will reach out to you later to see how we can set it up in Switzerland. I'm super interested. I just need to find 500 women, and we're a small country, but not as small as Liechtenstein. Moving on to another topic, a little bit less linked to the fundraising, a little bit more linked to FemTech. FemTech received a lot of criticism, of course, surprise, and being accused of not being inclusive enough, excluding MenTech or andro tech, so everything linked to male fertility, for example, and also accusing of not including LGBTQI plus communities. Want to know the take of the panel on it, because for personally me, I never excluded those two. I mean, if somebody applies to Tech Forever Accelerator with a male fertility solution, welcome. Or if this is something for LGBTQ sexual wealth or something like that, other challenges that are being important for this communities, of course we would look into that. And for us it would be FemTech as well, because it addresses very important challenges. What is your take on that? I don't know who'd like to start.
I'm still processing the question.
I can maybe take a stab at it. I mean, from my perspective, I think of FemTech as the female body, biologically. So if you identify that way, regardless of how you say it, trans or LGBTQ, if you have the conditions that are specific to a woman's body, then I think FemTech applies to you, and the solutions are there. But if you don't have some of those features, and you're never going to experience some of those problems, there's a lot of FemTech, I think, that you'll never use. So it gets a little tricky there. And I think your male fertility example is a great one too, because that fertility issue is a two-sided coin, right? You need both sides to make a baby. And so if one side is struggling, and it's really, it's the man's and your partner's side that's not working, and that's why the couple can't have a baby, it's got to be part of the FemTech if we're talking about fertility as a FemTech topic. But then it quickly goes off course, because you're saying, well, prostate cancer is not a FemTech solution, but breast cancer is a FemTech solution, but men can have breast cancer. It gets really gray very fast. So I guess it depends where and when you're using the cutoffs. I don't think it's coming up that often. I think it's like, I guess in reports, maybe like, do you count this investment or not? But it just doesn't come up enough for me to worry about it, because Plug and Play invest in startups that are not just FemTech. And there's not very many FemTech exclusive funds. And I'm sure they also just do it case by case.
Thank you.
And my sense here, still, being a, relative newbie in this field, because our perception actually was that, FemTech in terms of investment is grossly underrepresented. It is good to see that definition of FemTech actually, starts to stray away from, its traditional focus, such as, reproductive health, to other areas, including, sex tech or mental health, so on. And if we take anything to do with sexual well-being, obviously everyone heard about, Viagra and a bunch of other things, and the similar issue was not addressed in terms of FemTech previously. So the criticism can go, both ways. I think there is space for everyone, and personally, we are, happy to see that, FemTech is attracting more attention that, it definitely deserves. So that, in my opinion.
Thanks, Kate. I don't know, anyone else wants to add on that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I would like to add is like, right now, in terms of the global world, we really have to recognize that whatever solution we are bringing to the table, it needs to cater to all the population, given that now gay marriages and everything else has been, a lot of countries that are legalized those conversations. Those people are coming out of the closet. So in terms of how you're marketing and sales, the language should be inclusive. And no matter how you're identifying yourself as non-binary, the bodies are still have the same kidneys and same lungs. It's not a different body. So we are, no matter how you're looking at yourself from an outside perspective, you still have the body of a female or a man genitalia. So we want to make sure the products and the service and the communication are inclusive, because that's the world we are going in. We are not going backwards. And in the moving forward, more of these men or women non-binary are coming forward. So I want to make sure it's inclusive solutions that we are building.
That's really cool that you bring it up. Moving on to the next question, we spoke a lot about investors, we spoke a lot about venture funds, but we did not speak enough, in my opinion, about other sources of financing apart from 3Fs, so family, friends, and fools, that can be relevant for startups. And this can be, for example, research grants. This can be also partnerships with either corporates, insurance companies, hospitals, or it can be partnerships with health government organizations like NHS. What would be your advice on, let's say, other fundraising strategies, on partnerships with maybe NHS or some other organizations? As Tech Forever, we organize a lot of events that help people to discover, that help our startups discover and enter other markets like Japan, like UK. What we have learned that, for example, if you want to enter UK market, you most likely will have to work with the NHS, but it will be very challenging, and it might take up to 1 year to actually do something. So what's your take on alternative investments and partnerships?
I can go first, and I'm speaking
Sure.
more from a North American perspective. A lot of the success that I have seen with some of the femtech industries in Canada is those women, even men and non-binary, they are working with their local government, not on a granular level. So they are starting from their provincial or on in their territories and bringing those ideas to the table. So those representatives can go and talk about themselves in a bigger group. So you really have to start small, and you really have to see what other opportunities are going to be available in your area, in your sector, and make sure it's working for you. Start somewhere, because you can't do this alone. So you really have to take political help who can be able to elevate your voices and solutions and bring the money to the table for you.
Thank you. Any other thoughts on partnering with non-investors?
Sure. I'd say one sort of pocket of money you haven't talked a ton about is just debt. And there's particularly if you're making physical goods, or there's also venture debt if you're working on tech solutions. I think a lot of VCs don't play nicely with debt because they get paid back before we do. And that's one reason why you won't necessarily hear about it in discussions like this about fundraising. But if you are really clear on your margins and your economics, there's no reason you might not explore revenue-based financing, purchase order financing. There's a lot of options for you that may feel more expensive upfront, but in fact, you retain more ownership of the company long-term. Somebody like Silicon Valley Bank will often invest, they'll offer a line of credit following a big financing round. And so they lean on the lead investor, who is often an equity investor, to sort of do the diligence to say, you know, we're giving them 8 million, they'll give them another 6. And the idea is basically the VC is the collateral that's backing that loan.
Thank you. Elisa, before you leave us, any thoughts on non-investor funds?
Yeah. I found grant funding is a really good one to go after, especially in this sector. It's getting the most attention out of probably any area of healthcare. Grants are already trying to focus on this. Grant-driven projects have already been trying to focus on this work for years. So you might be able to go in from that realm. They typically try to focus on the nonprofit areas here in the US anyway. But there's typically a small amount of funding set up with each one. Another way to approach it too is you can essentially offer, if you have a SaaS solution, you can offer that solution to the grant, maybe give them some of the data that you have that they can use with whatever studies they might be working on. So there are ways to work with grant funding. That's probably been my favorite. I tend to try to recommend staying away from taking money from the wrong investor, even though it's money, and try not to take on any debt if you can avoid it. So this would probably be my best pieces of advice. I unfortunately do have to drop off. I'm so sorry.
Thank you so much.
Amazing panel. I'm very honored to have been a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Take care. Bye. And another thing that maybe on the investment perspective, I can say that from like my experience exchanging with some founders, what also worked great is hiring specialized people, especially if you're going into certain markets that can help you connect with the investors there and raise funds, and then they just take a small percentage. But they have a direct interest. You need just to make sure that these are the right investors for you and for your company, as was already mentioned. And let's maybe finish by a very sexy topic, which is blockchain. I personally love this technology, despite the controversy and despite the big promise that maybe I think we experienced a little bit of blockchain bubble, right? Like 2018, everything got tokenized. Like, as I say, only my dog did not create an ICO, everyone else did. And then it kind of went down, and though the tech matured, we still see very few implementations, especially in health, right? However, clearly the technology has a lot of potential, and we're seeing now more and more startups in health tech and a little bit in FemTech using that. The coolest application that I see is that blockchain technology can also allow you to store your data in a very secure way, and there are some companies that are giving you back the ownership of your data, which you decide what do you want to do with. Do you want to donate it for research? Do you want to sell it to somebody and get some incentives? I believe that data and more information on fertility journeys, pregnancy journeys, and especially at-risk pregnancies has a potential to disrupt the industry and to develop really cool solutions. So is there a future for blockchain and femtech, and what is the next big thing, or maybe not, and how, in your opinion, data can transform the field as well? Who would like to start? Kate, how about you? You've been super silent.
Well, I think I will probably take a back seat because I would like to listen to experts here. But in general, of course, yes, no one can underestimate the importance of data. I mentioned earlier that we're big believers in AI. Of course, data privacy and security obviously is an issue that needs to be addressed. So yes, I think it's great. In terms of what's the latest and greatest and how we can implement it in specific examples, I will defer to either panelists here.
Thank you.
I can jump here. So again, coming from technology, I think blockchain was another kind of a big shiny object that was introduced in 2011. There were a lot of companies that went through the chain. However, we really have to understand each country has a different regulation process for data privacy. And it's not sometimes applicable. So even though if me as an entrepreneur would like to use blockchain for my own business, maybe my client don't have the capacity or have the ability to use that kind of service. So we really have to see whether your community, your clients, your customers, current and potential, are ready for using that kind of services. And it's not just if this is able to be successful in Canada, it may not be successful in Switzerland. Let's just for the argument's sake. So it's not like one solution fit all. So you really have to take a grain of salt, and there is no like right or wrong answer. So, so you really have to see, are you ready? Your market is ready. You are ready as a business, or the country or the province or the territory you're living are going to be operating the same way, because sometimes the next shiny objects may not be a solution for you.
Thank you. Julian, would you like to add on that?
Yeah, I think similar. Don't use blockchain if it doesn't make sense for the product you're building. It's a really great technology for certain use cases. It doesn't need to be in everything.
Thanks. Anyone else? Alex, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would echo Julian that the having clean, helpful data, like any kind of universal healthcare records. The toughest thing is just sort of making sure that the data is accurate and that we're all speaking the same language, and the storage of it is maybe to me a secondary challenge. I don't want false information to be immutably recorded forever. So I think there are interesting applications across healthcare with supply chain and identification and things that blockchain sort of has been promising us. And I'm a little bit on the fence of like, I think we may have some challenges to solve on the front end on what we're collecting before we sort of figure out exactly how to store it and lock it up.
Thank you. We are soon going to approach the end of this conference. So before you all go, I want to do this thing that I love to do when I moderate sessions. Can I please ask you all to make sure that you're messaging everybody, not just the panelists and hosts? Write a message, but don't send it. Don't send it. And I will do like a countdown, like 3, 2, 1, and then I will ask you to send it. So just write the message now, but do not send it. And write either how you're feeling right now. So me, I'm feeling like super pumped, super energetic. Maybe you're feeling down, and that's also okay to share that with us. But I hope you're feeling something positive right now. Or write one action that you're going to do in the next 10 days that was inspired or sparked in you by this conference. So write it right now. Now I'm gonna count down. 3, 2, 1. Send it. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is called a waterfall. I don't know, Kate, if you have any closing remarks. I just would like to thank you all. It's been really, really cool.